Welcome, you curious mind, to a deep dive into a topic that touches, well, pretty much every corner of our world, yet often feels just too vast to grasp. Global peace.
Mm,
We've all seen the headlines, right? The daily updates on conflicts, on crises. But what's the true state of global peacefulness right now?
yeah. And what are the hidden costs, the real economic burden of all this unrest?
Exactly. And what specific factors are actually, driving the escalation we seem to be witnessing?
Well, today we're unpacking a really comprehensive source for this. It's the Global Peace Index 2025.
Ah, the GPI, produced by the Institute for Economics and Peace, IEP.
That's the one. This is their 19th edition, and it's incredibly thorough. I mean, it ranks 163 independent states and territories.
Yeah.
Yeah, covering something like 99.7% of the world's population. And they use 23 different indicators, both qualitative and quantitative, to measure peace.
That's an enormous undertaking, gauging something so complex.
It really is.
So our mission here in this deep dive is to pull out the most important nuggets from this huge report,
Mm.
helping you quickly get up to speed on the main trends in global peace, the surprising economic impact of violence, the specific factors that cause conflicts to escalate.
And also that paradoxical role of information flows in all of this.
Right. We'll explore these insights across the three main areas the GPI measures: societal safety and security,
Ongoing domestic and international conflict.
and militarization. Okay, so let's get into it. The headline findings. The GPI 2025 reveals a pretty concerning picture, doesn't it?
It really does. Global peacefulness deteriorated again by 0.36% in the past year.
And that marks the sixth consecutive year of decline. Just let
Yeah.
that sink in.
Yeah.
6 years straight.
Yeah. And the average country score has also gotten worse for 13 of the past 17 years.
13 out of 17.
It hasn't improved on average in any single year since the 2013 GPI.
Wow, so it's not just a blip.
Not at all. In fact, get this, 97 countries are now less peaceful than they were back when the index started in 2008.
97.
Mm-hmm.
That's more than half the countries measured. What does this relentless decline really tell us about the state of the world?
It suggests a pretty fundamental systemic erosion of peace. It's not just isolated incidents we're seeing.
Right.
And what's really revealing is how it breaks down across those domains we mentioned. There was a slight improvement, on average, in safety and security this past year.
Okay. A small positive then.
A small one, yes. But peacefulness deteriorated significantly in both ongoing conflict and militarization.
Both of them.
Yeah. And the militarization part is especially notable because it's the second year in a row it's gotten worse.
And that reverses a trend, right?
Exactly. Reverses a whole decade where things were actually improving on the militarization front. So that shift is kind of a major red flag.
And if we drill down even further, the specific indicators, they paint an even more detailed and often, grim picture.
They do. Out of the 23 GPI indicators, only 8 improved over the past year.
Only 8.
13 deteriorated. And 2 showed no change. The biggest deterioration was specifically on the indicator external conflicts fought.
External conflicts fought. What does that tell us about where conflict is heading?
It points directly to one of the key findings in the report, this increasing internationalization of conflicts,
Oh, okay.
which makes solutions far more difficult to achieve. It's not just civil wars contained neatly within borders anymore.
Right. Things spill over.
Massively. A striking 78 countries are now engaged in some kind of conflict beyond their own borders.
78.
And the report highlights what they call internationalized interstate conflicts.
Okay, break that down.
So conflicts within a country, like a civil war, but ones that become deeply tangled up with external actors.
Like other nations or global powers getting involved.
Exactly. And those types of conflicts have increased an alarming 175% since just 2010.
175% increase. That's huge. And that must make these conflicts incredibly complex and just drag on forever.
Absolutely. It dramatically changes the game for trying to resolve them.
Which leads to a really critical question, I think, about how conflicts are actually ending these days or not ending.
Well, that's another intriguing finding. Fewer violent conflicts now end with a clear victory, or even a negotiated peace deal.
Really? How much fewer?
So since the 1970s, the percentage of conflicts ending with a clear military victory dropped from about 49% down to just 9%.
Wow, from almost half to less than 10%.
And those ending in formal peace agreements, they fell from 23% down to a mere 4%.
Only 4% end with a peace deal now. So what happens in the rest?
Well, this is the staggering part. A huge 70% of conflicts now end with what the report calls low activity, but no negotiated outcome.
At 70% just fizzle out or
Bingo.
go dormant.
Essentially, yes. They aren't formally resolved, which means, they're highly susceptible to re-erupting later.
What are the implications of that, this new reality where conflicts don't really conclude?
That staggering statistic, 70% ending inconclusively, it's not just a grim number. It reveals this fundamental shift.
Right.
It means the world is basically accumulating a growing backlog of unresolved grievances. It's like a tinderbox, just waiting.
Ready to reignite.
Exactly. It suggests that our traditional peacekeeping models or post-conflict recovery ideas, they might just not be fit for purpose anymore.
We need new approaches.
Radically new approaches to achieve actual lasting resolution. Otherwise, you're just leaving these fires smoldering, never truly put out.
Okay, so despite this really bleak overall picture, you mentioned there were some noticeable pockets of improvement, which we should acknowledge.
Absolutely. It's not all bad news everywhere. The indicators for perceptions of criminality and the actual homicide rate continued their long-running trend of improvement globally.
That's interesting. Perceptions of crime and actual homicides improving?
Yeah. For example, several countries in Central and North America recorded significant reductions in homicides.
Even though that region still has issues.
Right. Even though the region as a whole still has the highest average homicide rate. So, while the macro picture is definitely concerning, there are certainly areas where positive changes are happening, maybe more at the local level.
Still, those small improvements, while welcome, they can't really overshadow the immense and often unseen toll that global violence takes.
No, they can't.
Because when peace deteriorates, there's a staggering price tag attached. Let's shift focus now to the true economic burden of all this unrest.
Okay.
So what does this actually mean for the global economy? The report puts a number on it, right?
A huge number. The global economic impact of violence was estimated at $19.97 trillion in 2024.
19. Almost $20 trillion.
Yeah, which is equivalent to about 11.6% of global GDP.
11.6% of everything the world produces.
Or, put another way, about $2,455 for every single person on the planet.
Wow. $2,500 per person, and this isn't static.
No, that figure represents a 3.8% increase just from the previous year.
Just take a moment to think about that number. Nearly $20 trillion. It's almost unimaginable, isn't it?
It really is.
That's more than the entire GDP of many large economies combined. Money just diverted from productive uses to the destructive costs of conflict. It really puts the price of unrest into perspective.
It absolutely does. And this increase in cost, it was largely driven by two key factors.
Okay, what were they?
First, a 6% rise in military expenditure globally, and second, a really significant 44% increase in GDP losses that come directly from conflict itself.
44% increase in GDP losses from conflict. That's massive.
Huge. And in fact, military spending and internal security spending, if you put them together, they account for a massive 73% of that total economic impact of violence.
73%, just military and internal security. That's stark imbalance. All this money on military spending compared to, say, peace-building efforts. It's shocking. Does the report get into why this imbalance persists?
It doesn't explicitly state the why so much, but it starkly highlights the outcome. Expenditure on peace building and peacekeeping was just $47.2 billion in 2024.
Okay, $47 billion. Sounds like a lot, but compared to the military spending.
It's tiny. It's a mere 0.52% of total military spending, less than 1%.
It's like a percent.
And that figure, the $47 billion, actually represents a 26% decline in real terms since 2008.
So spending on peace is actually going down.
In real terms, yes.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the economic impact from conflict deaths, from GDP losses, from refugees and internally displaced persons, IDPs, each of those costs has more than tripled in the last 16 years.
Tripled. So the costs are soaring, but investment in peace is shrinking.
It's a huge imbalance. We're spending vastly more on addressing the symptoms of conflict than on actually preventing or resolving them.
If we zoom out, how does this pattern fit into the bigger global picture, the geopolitical shifts?
Well, this trend naturally leads us to think about those broader shifts. The report states that geopolitical fragmentation has substantially increased.
Fragmentation, meaning countries pulling apart.
Yeah, cooperation breaking down. It says fragmentation now exceeds levels seen even during the Cold War.
Wow. Higher than the Cold War.
That's what the index suggests. And it's most noticeable in relations between neighboring states. 59 countries recorded poorer ties with their neighbors since 2008, while only 19 improved.
That's a bad ratio.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
At global integration, whether you look at economics, trade, diplomacy, military cooperation that's been steadily falling since the 2008 global financial crisis.
So less cooperation, more friction.
And more protectionism, too. Restrictive trade practices rose to over 3,000 in 2023. That's nearly triple the figure from just 2019.
Triple the trade restrictions. It definitely sounds like a world pulling apart, not coming together.
It does. But there's an intriguing finding here about power dynamics, too.
Oh.
The report suggests we're moving into an age of, quote, global power fragmentation.
Meaning power is spreading out more, not just superpowers.
Exactly. The number of countries that have substantial influence in other nations has nearly tripled since the Cold War. It went from 13 up to 34 by 2023.
13 to 34 influential countries. So more players on the stage.
More players, and competition for influence is intensifying, especially places like Africa, South Asia, and South America.
What does that mean for stability, though? More players, more competition?
Well, it certainly creates a more complex multipolar world. Influence is more diffused, but competition for it is much higher, and that could potentially lead to more proxy conflicts and contested regions.
Right. And on top of that, you mentioned military spending earlier.
Yes, global military spending hit a record $2.7 trillion in 2024.
$2.7 trillion.
That's a 9% increase from the previous year, largely driven by conflicts like the war in Ukraine.
And nuclear weapons.
Every single nuclear-armed state has either held onto or expanded its arsenal since 2022.
So no progress there.
Not really. And there's an interesting point about Europe's spending versus Russia's. Europe's current military expenditure is almost 4 times that of Russia.
4 times higher, okay?
But its combined military capacity is estimated to be only about 1/3 higher than Russia's.
Only a third higher capacity despite 4 times the spending. How does that work?
It highlights that critical issue of fragmentation again. It's not just about how much you spend. It's about how efficiently and cohesively those resources translate into actual usable military power. Europe's efforts are fragmented.
Got it. And finally, the report mentions macroeconomic factors increasing conflict risk. Things like slow growth, high inflation. How exactly does that work? Can you paint a clearer picture of that mechanism?
Absolutely. So global GDP growth was modest, 3.3% in 2024, while inflation stayed pretty high at 5.8%. For developing countries, this creates immense pressure.
How so?
Well, they're spending, on average, 42% of their government revenue just servicing debt.
42%, just on debt payments.
Yes, with China being the largest creditor in many cases. So when that much revenue goes to debt, there's much less left for social programs, infrastructure, education, even basic services.
Which leads to public discontent.
Exactly. And then you have things like high youth unemployment in the Middle East and North Africa. It was still high at 24.5% in 2023. That creates a large population feeling frustrated with few prospects.
And we're seeing real-world consequences.
Definitely. Economic stress in sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, with countries like Ghana and Zambia actually defaulting on their debt.
Wow.
And extreme inflation in parts of South America, Argentina, over 200% inflation. These things are directly leading to social turmoil, protests, and even military coups in some cases.
So economic instability, lack of opportunity, they're direct feeders of unrest and conflict.
Absolutely. They create fertile ground.
Okay, so if the global trend is declining peacefulness, the cost of violence is skyrocketing, peace building is underfunded, it almost feels like we're heading towards some kind of breaking point. Does the GPI confirm that grim suspicion?
It certainly seems to. The report confirms the world is facing, and I quote, a violent conflict crisis.
A crisis.
Yes. There were 59 state-based conflicts active in 2023. That's the highest number since the end of World War II.
Highest since World War II? That's significant.
Very. And deaths from state-based violent conflict reached a 32-year high back in 2022. The sheer number of active conflicts and their increasing intensity, it just dramatically increases the risk of rapid escalation, things spinning out of control.
Given that escalating risk, the IEP identified 9 major factors that specifically increase the likelihood of a conflict getting worse, right? Intensifying.
That's right. 9 key factors.
What are some of those critical drivers?
Well, they include things like whether the conflict starts in a city that's urban origin onset.
Okay.
There's something called fratricidal coercion.
Sounds grim. What is it?
It's where groups within a conflict use extreme violence against their own community or ethnicity to force compliance or loyalty.
Wow. Okay. What else?
Conflict instrumentalization. That's where the conflict itself is deliberately used by certain groups, maybe political elites or factions, as a tool to achieve their own goals, like gaining power or resources.
So profiting from the chaos.
In a sense, yes. And another major one is significant external support.
Mm-hmm.
Other countries or groups pouring in weapons, money, or even troops.
Like we discussed with internationalization.
Exactly. The report uses the Spanish Civil War as an example, where external backing and heavy weapons just magnified the scale of the fighting enormously.
And more recently.
Ethiopia's recent war in Tigray, terribly deadly, one of the worst since the Rwandan genocide. It really exemplifies how political fractures combined with these kinds of drivers can propel violence to just exceptional levels.
And these factors are common.
Worryingly so.
Yeah.
The IEP assessed 62 specific pairs of conflicting parties, dyads they call them. Every single one had at least one of these escalation factors present with a significant risk score.
Every single one. So stepping back, this helps us understand the specific areas the GPI identifies as hotspots, right? Places with a high likelihood of violent conflict deaths in the coming year.
Precisely. The report flags several key areas for June 2025 to June 2026. These include the Central Sahel region in Africa, Mexico due to cartel violence, Ukraine, obviously, Bangladesh, and the disputed Kashmir region between India and Pakistan.
Let's maybe delve into a few of those, connecting them back to those escalation factors. Kashmir, for instance.
Right. Kashmir is always a major concern, involving two nuclear-armed states. The report notes a hypothetical scenario, an April 2025 terror attack killing Indian tourists, sparking reprisals, halting dialogue, and bringing India and Pakistan closer to open war.
A plausible and terrifying scenario. What escalation factors are present there?
Several. Logistical challenges in the mountainous terrain make military operations difficult and potentially prolonged. There's significant external support to militant groups allegedly operating from Pakistan's territory.
Okay.
And ethnic exclusion is a factor linked to India's revocation of Kashmir's semi-autonomous status back in 2019. It's a classic mix of external involvement, identity politics, and difficult geography fueling potential conflict.
Let's look at Syria. After Assad's regime collapsed in late 2024, this group, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, took control in Damascus, setting up a transitional government. But the violence isn't over.
Far from it. You still have numerous external powers. Turkey, Israel, the U.S., Iran, Russia, all maintaining a military presence, exerting influence, and essentially fueling proxy competition.
So what escalation factors are at play in Syria now?
You've got the urban origin of the conflict initially. You have non-state actors like HTS possessing heavy weapons. You clearly have significant external support from multiple countries.
Right.
There's ethnic exclusion dynamics and definitely conflict instrumentalization as various factions use the instability to push their own agendas. It's really a textbook case of a highly internationalized intrastate conflict.
Okay, another hotspot mentioned is the tension between Ethiopia and Eritrea.
Yes, heightened tensions in early to mid-2025, according to the report's assessment. Ethiopia's prime minister has publicly called securing access to the Red Sea an existential issue for the landlocked country.
Because they rely on Djibouti's port now?
Right, and pay an estimated $1.5 billion a year for it. Eritrea, meanwhile, sees its own ports as absolutely essential to its sovereignty.
So a clash over vital access.
Exactly. The report notes both countries deployed troops to the border in early 2025, and Eritrea even conducted a missile test.
What are the escalation factors driving this?
Again, significant external support is relevant. With Eritrean forces reportedly remaining in Ethiopia's Tigray region, there's ethnic exclusion elements and clear conflict instrumentalization by both states as they pursue these critical national interests. That struggle over vital resources like port access is a classic potential trigger.
Then there's South Sudan. The peace deal there, the RARCSS, effectively collapsed in early 2025.
Yes, leading to widespread hostilities, again, a severe political crisis. The first vice president was put under house arrest, national elections were postponed.
And the humanitarian costs.
Huge. Over 125,000 people displaced just since March 2025, and 9.3 million needing humanitarian assistance.
What's fueling this collapse?
Well, there's external military support, apparently from Uganda, and also spillover effects from the ongoing civil war in neighboring Sudan.
So regional instability feeding into it, and the escalation factors.
You have that external support, deep-seated ethnic exclusion linked to the historical tensions between Dinka and Nuer groups, and definitely conflict instrumentalization by elites fighting for control over power and the country's resources. It's a really complex interplay of internal rivalries and external pressures.
Finally, the Democratic Republic of Congo, the DRC, a severe escalation there this year.
Yes, between the government and the M23 rebel group. The report highlights that M23 is significantly supported by neighboring Rwanda.
And M23 has made gains.
major offensives in late 2024 and early 2025. They captured key cities like Goma, with a population of 2 million, and Bukavu, with 1 million.
The scale of displacement must be enormous.
Yes, over 7.8 million people internally displaced in the DRC now.
And the escalation factors driving this specific conflict?
It vividly demonstrates several. M23 clearly has high logistical supply capabilities, which the report says are augmented by Rwanda. They have access to heavy weapons, tanks, drones, even anti-aircraft systems, allegedly from Rwanda.
So direct external backing is key.
Absolutely. Significant external support from Rwanda is listed as a major factor. There's also ethnic exclusion dynamics and conflict instrumentalization very much tied to control over the DRC's vast mineral resources.
A fight over resources.
Yes. And interestingly, the report also notes that private military contractors, mainly European, are involved supporting the government forces. So it's an incredibly complex web of actors.
Okay, let's pivot slightly now to a critical but maybe often unseen aspect of peace and conflict information.
Yes. Very important.
The report stresses that the free flow of information is foundational to peace. Societies with open, better information systems consistently rank higher on the GPI. So what's the story here? Is information flowing freely?
Well, the story is actually quite mixed, and it highlights a real paradox.
Yep.
On the one hand, access to telecommunications phones, internet has improved more than any other single indicator in the Positive Peace Index, a huge 35.9% global average improvement.
So more people are connected. That sounds good.
It does. But on the other hand, press freedom has seen the steepest decline of any indicator, down 13.4%, and information quality has seen the second steepest decline, down 6.9% over the last decade.
So we have more ways to connect, but the freedom to report and the quality of information are getting worse.
Yeah, precisely. It creates this environment where misinformation and disinformation are actually easier to spread, often by governments or other actors, even as the tools for accessing information become more common.
That's a worrying combination. And this raises an important question about how the media actually covers conflict. The report points out disparities.
Huge disparities. A high number of deaths in a conflict does not necessarily translate into a high volume of news coverage.
Really? Can you give an example?
Yeah, in 2023, civilian deaths in high-income countries received, on average, 100 times more media articles than a similar number of deaths in low-income countries.
100 times more coverage.
Yes. Think about places like Ethiopia or Burkina Faso, which had over 20,000 civilian deaths each, but got very little international media attention.
So our global understanding of peace and conflict must be really skewed by this.
It absolutely is. Civil conflicts, which actually make up the vast majority of conflicts around the world and cause immense suffering, they get far less attention than conflicts between states.
Why is that, do you think?
Well, the media imbalance definitely shapes public perception and, consequently, policy priorities. We end up often ignoring some of the most devastating human costs simply because they don't get the coverage.
And what does get the coverage?
Major power rivalries tend to dominate the headlines. Media reporting on international affairs focuses heavily on those competitive interactions between global powers.
Like Russia-Ukraine.
Exactly. Over 20,000 news items on that since 2018. We also see significant coverage of U.S.-Russia relations, U.S.-China, though the report notes much of that is categorized as verbal conflict.
Just words, mostly.
Often, yes. Same with India-Pakistan, also often framed as verbal conflict in the media data, despite the underlying tensions we discussed.
Okay, so that's the somewhat concerning picture on information quality and media bias. But the report also highlights another, maybe more hopeful story unfolding in the information space.
Yes, and it's fascinating. It's the rise of transnational grassroots movement.
Grassroots movements operating globally.
Exactly. Formed and led by poor, marginalized groups themselves. And they're really defying stereotypes by engaging directly in global advocacy.
Yes.
Well, for one thing, they often question the right of others, like big international NGOs, to represent them. They sometimes feel, used just for legitimacy by bigger organizations.
They want to speak for themselves.
Precisely. It feels like a real shift in power dynamics. These movements take a much more empowered stance. They see themselves as vital players in both macro and microeconomic contexts, not just appealing as victims needing charity.
So they're not just asking for help, they're proposing solutions.
Exactly. They come to the table with concrete strategies, arguing that sustainable solutions are only possible through genuine partnership with them, the people directly affected.
Can you give an example?
Sure. The report mentions women in the informal economy globalizing and organizing, or WeGoGo,
We go, okay.
formed back in 1997. They work to make informal workers, street vendors, waste pickers, home-based workers statistically visible, and they try to influence labor standards by collaborating directly with bodies like the UN and the International Labor Organization. But crucially, they prioritize their grassroots members leading the way.
Interesting. Any others?
Yes, Slum Shack Dwellers International, or SDI. Founded in 1996, it's made up of federations of the urban poor across 11 countries.
What have they achieved?
Quite a lot. They successfully pushed for formal recognition of pavement dwellers' land claims in India, for example. And they develop community-designed housing and sanitation solutions, showing alternatives to top-down approaches.
So both Waego and SDI, they've managed to actually change the conversation?
Yes, they've successfully changed definitions, shifted debates, and influenced policy dialogues about their constituents. They've gained real legitimacy for their approaches.
And that legitimacy comes from?
From their genuine grassroots base. That gives them credibility in the eyes of policymakers and multilateral institutions, much more than perhaps some traditional NGOs might have.
And that poses a challenge to those other actors.
It does. It challenges other transnational civil society groups to properly link up with these movements and, importantly, make space for direct grassroots representation in global forums. It's a really powerful model for genuine bottom-up change.
Okay, so let's try and bring this all together. Today, we've taken a real deep dive into this complex landscape of global peace, drawing heavily on the Global Peace Index 2025.
We have.
And we've seen a world where, unfortunately, peacefulness is in an alarming state of decline, sixth year running.
Mm-hmm. And where the economic costs of violence are just staggering nearly $20 trillion and vastly underaddressed compared to military spending.
We've seen how conflicts are escalating, driven by a specific set of factors like external interference, resource competition, ethnic divides, all amplified by growing geopolitical fragmentation.
Yeah, that fragmentation seems key.
Yeah.
And we also touched on how information flows are this double-edged sword expanding access, but declining quality and freedom, often obscuring the true human cost of conflict through biased coverage.
Yet, amidst all of these really significant challenges, we also found some inspiration, didn't we, in the rise of those empowered grassroots movements.
Absolutely. Redefining how change happens, offering a more legitimate, ground-up path to finding solutions.
This whole exploration really shows that understanding peace isn't just about, scanning the headline.
Not at all. It's about recognizing these intricate connections between economic pressures, geopolitical shifts, the way information is shared and consumed, and crucially, the role of direct community engagement.
It really underscores that peace isn't just an abstract ideal. It's a dynamic, measurable state. And its absence has these profound, tangible costs for every single one of us.
That's right.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. Given that conflicts, as we heard, are increasingly ending without clear resolution or peace deals.
Just sort of simmering.
Exactly. And the economic burden of violence keeps rising while dedicated peace-building efforts are actually declining. What new and innovative approaches will be necessary? Perhaps inspired by those empowering direct stakeholder strategies we saw from the transnational grassroots movements. What will it take to truly shift the world's focus back towards achieving positive, sustainable peace in the years ahead?
That's the critical question, isn't it?
It really is something for all of us to ponder as we look to the future.